Welcome to the Cold Case Christianity broadcast, the only Christian case-making program hosted by a cold case homicide detective. J. Warner Wallace has been investigating cold case murders in Los Angeles County for over a decade. His work has been featured on Fox News, Court TV, and Dateline. For more information about Jim's work and the case for Christianity, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. Now, here's your host, J. Warner Wallace.
Welcome to Cold Case Christianity. I'm J. Warner Wallace. This week we're going to talk a little bit about the nature of truth and the lies that are commonly told about truth, especially at university campuses across America, where young people are still saturated in the kind of pluralism and relativism that we see just running rampant in our country. I want to talk about the nature of truth because it turns out if you don't clearly have a grasp on this issue, you're likely to be very passive and dispassionate about what you believe as a Christian. If, for example, if you think that Christianity is just making a claim that's subjective, that is really a matter of an opinion, well, then why would you want to change anyone's opinion about what they believe? If you've got a friend who's a Mormon or a friend who's a Muslim, why would you even offer your opinion about Christianity if that's all it is? On the other hand, if our views about God are trying to accurately describe the way God really is and not just our opinions about the way God is, then we might be animated to actually make a case for what we believe. So before we begin to talk about the lies that are told about the truth, I'd like us to cover the distinction between subjective and objective truth claims. Subjective truth claims are those truth claims that are held by subjects. They're a matter of personal opinion. I have an opinion about my favorite movie, about my favorite books, about my favorite types of cars. These are my personal subjective opinions. I know they are subjective because the subject, Jim, gets to decide whether or not they are true. And as a matter of fact, one way you can distinguish subjective truth claims from objective truth claims is simply to ask the question, can your opinion change this? Can you just change your mind and actually change the nature of the claim? Now, the other kinds of claims, I'll give you a couple examples in a minute, but other kinds of claims are known as objective truth claims. In other words, the truth resides not in the subject who holds an opinion, but in the very truth of the object being described. When the truth resides in the object, that's an objective truth claim. If I say for you, for example, my car is white, well, that's an objective truth claim because it resides in the object. The car is either white or it's not. It's true or it's false. But my opinion about the color of my car can't change the color of the car. I can't have an opinion and say, you know what, in my opinion, my car is blue. If I walk out to see my car in the driveway, I'm going to discover that it's white. So my opinion can't change it. And that's how we can distinguish between subjective and objective truth claims. On the other hand, if I said, white is the best color for cars, well, that's a little bit different. That's a subjective claim. That's my personal opinion about the nature of white cars. I think that's the best color for. You might hold that opinion because you think it keeps the temperature down in a hot day, or it doesn't look as dirty over the long run. Whatever your opinion may be, it would be just that. It would be a truth claim that's rooted, as a matter of opinion, in the subject who holds it. And that's the distinction between subjective and objective. Now, if what we believe about God is merely a matter of subjective opinion, then it really doesn't make any sense to try. You don't spend a lot of time arguing on the streets about your favorite dessert or your favorite movie. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion about such things. But if people are dying, let's say, of tuberculosis, well, then you have a cure, and you know that they've been taking something like Advil to treat the symptoms, or NyQuil to treat the symptoms, and you want to offer them the cure for TB, the cure for tuberculosis, well, then you know the nature of this truth claim, my claim that this is the cure for tuberculosis, please take it, is not rooted in my opinion. In their opinion, they might prefer to take NyQuil or Advil. But the truth is rooted in the object, the cure for tuberculosis. One of the antibiotics offered is isoniazid. Well, if you don't use that antibiotic, you are not going to be cured of tuberculosis. It's one of a 4 antibiotic cocktail. And so you've got to take this particular cocktail, and nothing else will work. So it comes down to deciding the difference between objective and subjective. Nobody's going to argue about what their favorite cookie flavor is. Chocolate chips? Is it ginger? Is it oatmeal? No one's going to argue about that. But people ought to be arguing about whether or not the thing they hold is actually the cure for TB. If you think that what you believe about the nature of God is just a matter of opinion and not the objective cure for what's killing all of humanity, you're going to be far less likely to share it. In my opinion, that's why we see so much hesitance about sharing the truth about Christianity. We still have a tendency to see it as a matter of subjective opinion instead of objectively true for all of us, regardless of our opinion. Now, if it's objectively true, we have a duty to share cures. We don't have a duty to share cookie flavors. My question for you, of course, is, are you treating the cross of Christ like a cookie instead of a cure? Are you treating it like a subjective truth claim, a matter of opinion, or are you treating it as an objective truth, like a cure for what's killing you? If we begin to realize the difference between objective and subjective, I think we'll start to act differently, to speak differently about the gospel. Now, before we go any further, I want to offer 2 quick lies that I hear on the college campuses, and then we'll take a break. The first is this lie that there really is no truth, and no truth about the nature of God. But not only that, there's really not much truth objectively about anything. Everything, if you think about it, is a matter of perspective, perspectival truth. And you'll hear this sometimes when folks like Einstein here in his quote, "Truth is what stands the test of experience." Well, I mean, think about that. That makes sense. If, in fact, that is the case, and truth is what stands the test of experience, my experience is different than your experience. Therefore, my truth would be different than your truth. And this is the nature of claims such as this, when they'll say to you, hey, back off. There are no objectively true things for everybody. Everything's a matter of opinion, perspective, cultural perspective, personal perspective, historical perspective. So don't come on so strong about these alleged truth claims related to God, when in fact there are no such things as objective truth claims. You'll hear something else similar. I want you to read these words here. I've got, I'll put them on the screen. I want you to try to guess who this is. Believe nothing just because, this is somebody said this. I want you to guess if you can see who might have said it. Believe nothing just because a so-called wise person said it. Believe nothing just because a belief is generally held. Believe nothing just because it's said in ancient books. Believe nothing just because it's said to be of divine origin. Believe nothing just because someone else believes it. Believe only what you yourself test and judge to be true. Now here's a claim, and by the way, it's a very ancient claim, that you shouldn't really believe anything because somebody else said it, or because somebody else trusts it, or because it's maybe an old ancient claim. You shouldn't believe any of this. The only thing that passes the test for whether it's true or not is what you yourself test and judge to be true. And the person who said this was Buddha. Now, do you see a problem with the statement in general? The statement that you should only trust, you can't trust anything ancient, you can't trust anything in a divine book or of allegedly divine or. Where do you think we would find this statement of Buddha? It's an ancient statement accepted by lots of people from antiquity, from divine origin of Buddha, or the nature of Buddha being somehow better than anybody else. Do you see how this claim, if it indeed comes from the lips of Buddha, would violate everything it's claiming to stand for? If you can't trust anything ancient or written in some book or a belief held by lots of people, well, then you shouldn't trust this statement from Buddha. So the problem, of course, here is this is what's known as a self-refuting statement. It's like me saying, hey, I can't speak a word of English. In order to speak that statement to you, I have to demonstrate the false nature of my claim. And in order for Buddha to make a claim like this, especially for us, for a Buddhist, let's say, to make a claim that Buddha said this, thousands of years later, it has to violate its own principles in order to stand on its own 2 feet. It's called a self-refuting statement. I used to call these cannibals. They kind of eat themselves, and they don't make any sense. And the claim that there is no objective truth is a similarly self-refuting statement. If someone was to say that, the first thing you and I would want to know is that true? Is that objectively true? Are you telling me that it's objectively true that there are no objective truth claims? Because there appears to be at least one, that there are no objective truth claims. Do you see the problem with it? It is self-refuting. It makes no sense. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, I want to share another self-refuting claim and then show you how these 2 self-refuting claims have actually evolved into a much more complex problem.
Be sure to download the free Cold Case Christianity app from the iTunes Store and the Android Marketplace. The Cold Case Christianity app puts all the resources from coldcasechristianity.com in the palm of your hand. You can read the daily blog, listen to podcasts, and watch videos from within the application, and Jim uses the app to send direct messages to fans of Cold Case Christianity. The app will also link you to all Cold Case Christianity social media and provide you with a direct connection to J. Warner Wallace. Download the app today and become a better Christian casemaker.
Okay, now once we've established that that truth exists, and by just using this little simple process of demonstrating a self-refuting truth claim, I think you might get people to say, well, even if there is truth and truth exists, it sure is arrogant of you Christians to think you could actually know what that truth is, especially about God. Because the truth, although it may exist, it really can't be known. I mean, think about it for a second. Whatever you thought you knew scientifically 10 years ago, it certainly has changed. Scientific theories change all the time. So you really can't even know what you think you knew 10 years ago about the nature of the cosmos or the nature of a certain disease. Heck, we were probably treating TB in a different way than we are now, and we'll probably treat it somehow differently in the future. So truth can't really be known. It changes all the time. There are certain limits to our finite human experience, our finite mental capacity. So the idea that you could know truth is fallacious. Well, you hear sometimes some similar statements to this. Historically, you've heard this statement like this one: believe those who are seeking the truth, but doubt those who find it. This idea that, you really should doubt anyone who says they are arrogant enough to say that they know something, because after all, truth really cannot be known in that way. Or this statement from Molly Ivins, which I've always really liked. I believe that that ignorance is the root of all evil, and that no one knows the truth. Well, I think if you just kind of look at that statement for a minute, you can kind of see there is something that's kind of innately troubling about it, in the sense that, well, if Molly doesn't know, if no one knows the truth, that means that Molly doesn't know the truth, and she's ignorant, and so therefore I guess she's one of the many thousands of people who are... You see the problem with the statement? It is inherently self-refuting. If someone was to say to you, truth cannot be known, the first question you're going to ask is what? Do you know that's true? Do you know that truth can't be known? It seems to me there's at least one truth that can be known. That truth can't be known. Do you see the problem with it? It's another self-refuting statement. So here we have two examples of statements about truth that are, in fact, self-refuting. Look, this is the kind of ugly nature of truth to begin with. It's kind of like a safe falling out of the sky. You can deny it's there, you can make arguments about its nature, but if you don't get out of the way, it's going to crush you. That's the nature. It's a very unforgiving nature of truth. Truth is what truth is. And we can deny it, we can deny its existence, we can deny that it can be known, but in the end, we have to end up making statements that are themselves self-refuting, because the nature of truth is such that none of these things, the truth doesn't exist or the truth can't be known, are in fact truth. Those are two convenient lies we might like to believe about truth, because what that allows us to do, if objective truth doesn't exist, or if objective truth can't be known, then we really can't make a stand for anything, which is better yet, whatever we believe individually is equally true. If there is no objective truth about anything, everything's a matter of subjective opinion, then this is a great benefit it has for me, is that you can never say I'm wrong. And boy, then if I've got a view about how I want to behave in the world, if I've got a view about how I want to live, you're not going to be able to tell me anything about that view. It's right or wrongness, its moral nature. You won't be able to say you won't be able to make any judgment about who I am, what I believe, or how I live, if in fact I can get rid of this ugly little nasty thing called truth. Now that's the problem. And as a matter of fact, how it's evolved, I think, and this is a third claim, a third lie about truth that is emerged, I think, largely because of these first two. Because again, the effort here is to deny there are any objective truth claims in an effort to say, hey, whatever I hold, whatever position I hold, on a moral issue especially, is therefore simply a matter of opinion. Don't bother me. I want to live the way I want to live. I want to think the way I want to think. And I want you to embrace it as equally true. And that brings us to our third lie about truth, which is really wrapped up in the nature of tolerance and intolerance. There's a new cultural definition of tolerance. I'll put it on the screen for you. This new definition is not true, but boy, is it popular. And in many ways, it is very effective in eliminating the conversation altogether. So I want to read you the definition, and you see if you can see what's wrong with it. And remember, we've already talked about two self-refuting truth claims: that truth doesn't exist or that truth can't be known. I'm going to show you this, and I want you to tell me if you can see, in fact, a third a third self-refuting truth claim right here in the definition. Here it is, tolerance. All views, this is the new view. This is the new definition of tolerance. All views have equal merit, and none should be considered better than another. Now, do you see the problem with this? This idea of tolerance basically says that, hey, if you don't believe that my view is as equally meritorious to your view, well, then you're judging me harshly. You're being intolerant of me. You're not just you're supposed to embrace my view as having equal merit as your view. If there is no truth about anything, and everything's a matter of perspective, or if truth can't be known, well, this is the natural consequence of such thinking, isn't it? The idea that you should have to embrace everything as true, because nothing really is objectively true, nothing objectively false. Everything's just a matter of personal opinion. The grounding for whatever we believe stops right here. We're the bottom line. So therefore, how are you to judge, to say your bottom line is more important than mine, or your authority as the bottom line is more authoritative than mine? So if this is the new definition of tolerance, I want you to look at it again. Tell me, do you see the problem with it? Do you see the issue that's being raised by this view of tolerance? In the end, if I was to come to this gentleman and say, hey, you know, I've got a view of tolerance that's a little different than yours. I don't think every view is true. I think some views are really bad. Some views stink. Some views are dangerous. And I think that they don't have equal merit. Some views, I think, should be rejected, and some views should be embraced. Now, that's my view of the nature of ideas. Can you accept that along with your view? Now, your view, I understand, is that all views are equally meritorious. I get that. My view is that all ideas are not equally good or bad. Can you accept my view as equal to your own? Of course, he's not going to be able to do that, because his view is that, no, all ideas are equally meritorious, and my view is that, no, all ideas are not equally meritorious. But it turns out that his view requires him to accept my view as equal to his own, and he won't be able to do it. He won't do it. As a matter of fact, it's almost impossible to live out this view of tolerance. This is yet another self-refuting statement. It's got a problem because you can't live it. By making the statement, you're automatically judging that the opposing view to this is not as equally meritorious as this view. It's not as true as this view. It shouldn't be embraced as should this view. And that's the problem. This view of tolerance is, of course, just as self-refuting as the view of truth we offered before. Now, I wanted to show you the classic view of tolerance. It's a fair, objective, and permissive attitude toward those whose opinions, practices, race, religion, nationality, etc. differ from one's own. Differ. You're not to embrace every view as though it's equal to your own. You're allowed to believe that some views stink. You're allowed to believe that. As a matter of fact, if you embrace another person's view as equal to your own, you don't have to tolerate that person. You agree with that person. You only tolerate people you disagree with. And that brings me to the 3 Ds of tolerance. You need 3 Ds in order to have tolerance to begin with. You need a difference between the two views. You need a difference. These are 2 separate views. Understand the differences. You need another D, a disagreement. It's okay to disagree. You can say, I think these are bad. You think those are good. But we disagree on this. I'm not going to come to your side of this. I'm not going to embrace your idea as though it's good when I don't believe it is. There's a difference here, and I think we are at liberty to disagree. But the 3rd D is demeanor. You can't be a jerk toward those you disagree with. If you're going to be tolerant of somebody, you have to tolerate the disagreement. But you can't have tolerance without the disagreement. So I want to encourage you. If you see that there's a bad idea in the culture, or you see there's a bad idea being held by one of your friends, I want you to have the freedom to hate bad ideas, to strongly, vehemently disagree with dangerous ideas. But you're not at liberty to hate the people who hold them. How we treat people with bad ideas is what defines us as Christians, what defines us as tolerant people. Don't give up on the disagreements. That's not going to make you tolerant. But how you treat people with whom you have a disagreement, that is what's going to define you as tolerant. We'll take a break, come back, and I want to share one last little lie that's being told. It's actually a big lie, but it's easier to describe right after the break.
Need a speaker for your next conference, retreat, training seminar, or church service? Jim travels around the country, making the case for the existence of God, the deity of Jesus, and the reliability of the Bible. He'd love to partner with you to create a powerful, transformational training experience. Just visit the Cold Case Christianity website and click the Book Me tab. You'll find everything you need to know there, including a list of Jim's speaking topics, promotional materials, Jim's speaking calendar, and a link to connect with our team so we can book your event.
Okay, let's finish with a claim, a lie that's being told in the culture about the nature of truth that really is kind of rooted in what has become known as scientism. This idea that really, and this is growing in our culture, that I really can't trust that I know anything unless I can test this thing, test this idea with science. I've got to either be able to taste it, touch it. It's an empirical issue. It's some form of empiricism has to be used in order to know if something is true. And I would only trust those things. I mean, I've heard this all the time. People will say it kind of like this. You know, I'm a scientific person. I'm a skeptical person, and I really trust science more than anything else. So unless I can demonstrate it with science, I don't think I can really trust that it's true. And you hear this all the time in a culture that's moving more and more toward show me or I don't believe it kind of an attitude. And this idea also has been, I see it all the time in juries. We have this thing called the CSI effect, where we have to help jurors understand that, you know, we really can't do everything you see on CSI, the TV show. You know, it's not like everything in a court case is going to be determined with some form of science. As a matter of fact, most of the things we put in front of a jury in a trial are not going to be based in any kind of a scientific test at all. And as a matter of fact, the whole notion is self-refuting, like all the other claims we talked about today. This idea that you can only trust those things that you can determine by using some process of science. Okay, let's just back up a second. That claim in and of itself, the claim that I can only know things I can verify with science, can that be verified with science? Can that claim itself, that approach to truth, the approach that says I can only trust those things that can be verified by science, can that approach be verified by science? No. As a matter of fact, that's a philosophical foundation that is deeply philosophical and not scientific. It's an attitude that you start with, not something you arrive at through a scientific process. Again, it's a self-refuting statement because you can't know the very thing you're claiming. You're claiming you have to use science to know everything, yet this is something you know without science. As a matter of fact, it's not the only thing you would know without using some form of the scientific method or some form of a scientific exploration or experiment. There are logical and mathematical truths that are known without conducting science experiments. As a matter of fact, these are foundational truths that allow us to do science that are presumed beforehand, just like this philosophy about whether you can only know things with science. Also, certain metaphysical truths, like whether or not you can even know that the world around us is real. These are things that you cannot test with science. You have to presume some of these things foundationally. Even some moral and ethical truths. I don't think you can arrive at, I don't care what Sam Harris says in some of his writings. He's written a book called The Moral Landscape, in which he offers that he thinks that somehow the science of who we are as biological humans dictates what moral truths are. You can't get an is from an ought. You might know what is by doing science, but you can never know what ought to be by doing science. This is yet another form of truth that you cannot identify using the scientific method. Also, there are certain aesthetic truths about beauty or historical truths. Like I said, most of the historical truths that I'm trying to uncover as a cold case detective about events that happened in the past, murders that occurred in the past, I cannot arrive at by using some form of the scientific method or some form of scientific exploration. Now, this is something we have to really think about for a minute, because I think what it's grounded in is a presupposition toward naturalism, this idea that the culture is more and more kind of shrinking away from the supernatural or the possibility or the reasonable expectation of the supernatural. And instead, we are more and more rooted in a naturalistic perspective. How many times have you heard somebody try to defend a miracle in the Old Testament, like the parting of the Red Sea, by offering, well, you know, the Red Sea at a certain place is, you know, it's only so deep, and the winds can blow, or there's a plate tectonics here can cause this to happen. Really? We're so rooted in naturalism that we even seek to describe the supernatural miracles of Scripture in a naturalistic perspective. We want to defend them from a natural... Look, if there's a God, the very biggest and grandest miracle he ever worked was creating everything from nothing at the beginning of the universe. The most incredible miracle in all of Scripture is not the parting of the Red Sea. It's not his first miracle, obviously. It's when, in chapter 1 of Genesis, everything came from nothing. That is such a dramatic statement, such a dramatic claim of the supernatural, that if, in fact, there is a being who could accomplish such a thing, then I don't think we have to make excuses for how he might part the Red Sea. If we believe that everything came from nothing as a decision made by the uncaused first cause of the universe that we call God, don't get too shook up if lesser miracles may also have occurred, and don't try to explain them naturally. But our culture is moving in such a naturalistic direction that it shouldn't surprise us that we are finding people who will more and more often say, I can only trust a claim if I can verify it with science. It's up to you and I to show them how that claim is every bit as self-refuting as the claim that there is no truth, the claim that truth can't be known, or this new definition of tolerance. These, I would suggest to you, are the 4 lies that are commonly told in our culture, the 4 lies that continue to be told in university campuses, and you and I can make a difference in how we address these lies. Quickly, truth is not discovered as a matter of what works. It's not a utilitarian pragmatism that determines truth. There's lots of things that work, like a convenient lie, that don't make it true. Sweetheart, is my hair thinning? Oh, no, you look great. Okay, look, it might be a useful lie, but it's not going to change the fact of my thinning hair. This is also true in terms of it's not an emotional response. It's not emotivism is not what's going to determine truth either. Your emotions will often lie to you. Empiricism, as I described for you, is not going to determine truth, because there are times when you have to accept something foundationally that can't be tested by science. Truth is what we call the correspondent theory of truth. If what you believe corresponds with what really is, if I believe there's a microphone on this desk, and I look over, and oh my gosh, there is one, the relationship between what I believe and what is, that correspondence, one-on-one correspondence, is called truth. If there is a God, the one-on-one correspondence is what will determine whether or not it's true. My opinion can't make God exist. He either does or he doesn't. It's up to you and I to begin the search to see if he does. Hope that helps you think about truth this week and to be able to defend the nature of truth to those around us. I'll see you right here next week at Cold Case Christianity.
Thanks for joining us at the Cold Case Christianity broadcast. If you're interested in more information about this week's topic, please visit coldcasechristianity.com. For a thorough investigation of the reliability of the New Testament Gospels in the case for Christianity, be sure to purchase Cold Case Christianity. A homicide detective investigates the claims of the Gospels. It's available wherever books are sold.